Of all the unstable nations on Earth, there is none quite so powerful as Pakistan. Nuclear-armed, militarily capable, and home to 250 million people, Pakistan has made a strong account of itself in the 2020s. It's built close ties with Beijing and closer ties with Washington as it evolves into a major power of the Islamic world. At the same time, it's a nation in the throes of constant, deadly, overlapping insurgencies, staring down a nuclear rival, and never far from mutually assured destruction. It's a nation of boundless ambition, seeking wealth, relevance, and power on the global stage, and it's a nation where all that ambition and all of Pakistan's achievements can disappear with little more than the snap of a finger. Every day, Pakistan and its leaders walk a tightrope, tiptoeing their way toward what could be a glorious future and doing everything in their power to avoid a catastrophic fall from grace. But right now, Pakistan's position has become more dangerous than ever. Terror groups and separatist movements on its soil have been emboldened, and its political opposition is cornered with no way out except to fight. Its economy is stumbling, its regional position is precarious, and its new global friendships threaten to pull it in all directions at once. Worst of all, the nation's paramount leader and his allies seem to think they've already won, and in a nation that's never far from the brink of crisis, overconfidence can turn into a deadly mistake. Bombs across Balochistan. In the early morning hours, on Saturday, the 31st of January, the nation of Pakistan was hit with one of its largest terror attacks in years. The attack was centered on the resource-rich but impoverished province of Balochistan, a relatively rural region that makes up over 40% of Pakistan's total land area. In the regional capital city of Quetta, and in cities and towns all around the province, armed gunmen stormed police stations, banks, markets, schools, and seemingly every other target within their reach. Using explosive vests, rifles, and improvised bombs, those militants killed dozens of people at a minimum, although the precise death toll is unclear. According to the Pakistani government, over 35 civilians died in the attack, along with 22 police, military, and militia members who had tried to stop the bloodshed. According to the organization responsible, the attack was called Operation Heroth, or Black Storm, and had resulted in the deaths of 84 members of Pakistan's security forces, with another 18 taken hostage. The group that took credit for the attack was the Balochistan Liberation Army, better known to English-speaking observers as the BLA. Representatives of Pakistan's Baloch ethnic group, the same that makes up a local majority in Balochistan province, the BLA have been fighting an ongoing insurgency against Pakistan for years. They're a separatist group advocating for an independent Baloch state in an effort that's been ongoing since Pakistani independence in the late 1940s. At the heart of their insurgency is a grim reality. Balochistan possesses incredible natural resources. It should be a wealthy and abundant place, but it is exploited by the Pakistani government and its foreign partners, while the Baloch people never see a dime. The attack on Saturday the 31st was the latest in the BLA's insurgent campaign, which has only grown in its sophistication and coordination over the last several years. In response, Pakistani security services took action quickly. They leapt into action across towns and villages, began engaging BLA insurgents in the streets, and locked the region down while the terror attack was dealt with. Over the next 2 days straight, the region would be consumed by near-continuous gun battles, with Pakistani authorities claiming that 145 BLA militants had been killed by Sunday evening. On Wednesday, Pakistan reported the liberation of the town of Nushki, where BLA forces had taken over and then turned their weapons outward to defend against a siege. Dozens more militants and 7 police officers were declared to have been killed before the town had been cleared out fully. At that time, Pakistan indicated that fighting was still ongoing elsewhere, with nearly 180 BLA insurgents dead, and by then, the BLA was claiming that its fighters had killed 280 members of Pakistani security forces or more. Now, the truth of the death toll in Balochistan may not be known for some time, if, that is, the world ever learns the true toll on either side. Both the BLA and the Pakistani government are known to underreport death tolls on their own sides and inflate the claims of losses suffered by their adversaries. But regardless of the specific numbers, the scale of the BLA's weekend attack was undeniable. During the assault, BLA forces took multiple provincial officials hostage, seized district administrations in at least 6 locations, managed to coordinate attacks in 13 population centers, and came within a kilometer of the offices of the chief minister of Balochistan. They broke nearly 30 prisoners out of a single prison, attempted to breach the perimeter of a major Chinese-built deep-sea port, gained entry to the headquarters of the Pakistani Coast Guard, fired rocket launchers at a bank, set police stations on fire, and appeared to move freely across the provincial capital. The group was able to access mosque loudspeakers all over the province, calling for the ethnic Baloch population to help take over, and were able to sustain fighting with the Pakistani government for an entire weekend. All of that is so important because, according to the Pakistani government, the BLA and its allies in Balochistan are supposed to be on the retreat. In fact, by Pakistan's accounting of Balochistan's separatist crisis, the BLA are well under control, perpetually being thwarted and perpetually being hunted down. Just a day before the BLA's massive attack, Pakistan had announced that it had killed over 40 of the group's fighters in a pair of raids on their hideouts. In 2025, after BLA fighters hijacked a train and held it and its passengers hostage in a tunnel for over a day, the Pakistani government carried out reprisals and counterinsurgents operations that were supposed to ensure that such a thing could never happen again. Pakistan has rallied against the nation of India, which it accuses of fueling and supporting the Baloch insurgency, and has claimed that its crackdowns in the region were supposed to keep the group weak while curtailing any outside influence. And yet, here Pakistan was, again, with smoke rising over towns and cities, after almost 200 militants were able to carry out an attack on this scale. We start this episode about Pakistan's overall crisis with the story of the BLA and its recent attack, because both the BLA's strength and its ability to endure despite Pakistan's best efforts at counterinsurgency point to a much, much deeper problem. The people of Balochistan may be poor, but their land is some of the richest in all of Pakistan, and in an economic sense, it is extremely important for Pakistani authorities to protect. This is a place where major resource extraction operations have set up shop, not just fueled by Pakistani investment, but by massive foreign investment too. Money, equipment, and foreign lives are highly concentrated in Balochistan, overseeing and facilitating extraction, and Chinese interests in particular are well represented. That means that it is incredibly important to Pakistan to keep the region safe, stable, and investable, and yet an attack like this one was still somehow possible. Nor was this an isolated incident. Baloch insurgents frequently target Pakistan security forces, foreign-backed infrastructure projects, and especially Chinese interests. The BLA and their allies are a known quantity, with known ambitions and known operational objectives, and yet, when Pakistan gives its best attempt to stabilize the region, this is the result. If an attack like this is even possible, then the BLA isn't on the retreat, it's on the offensive. Nor is this the only asymmetric insurgency that Pakistan faces. It also deals with a second major terror threat in its more northerly regions from the Pakistani Taliban, a group that's separate from the Afghan Taliban, although Pakistan accuses the Afghan Taliban of supporting their Pakistani brethren. Operating primarily in the regions along the Afghan border, the Pakistani Taliban work alongside a network of other jihadist insurgencies, drawing local support from parts of the country's ethnic Pashtun population in the process. While the Pakistani Taliban hasn't quite returned to the strength they enjoyed during the peak years of the War on Terror, they've become a literally constant threat to Pakistan in the 2020s, perpetrating well over 1,000 recorded attacks in the last 2 years. Today, their objectives center on the establishment of locally based Sharia systems in the parts of Pakistan they control, where they can thus develop a level of semi-autonomous governance. They benefit tremendously from Pakistan's porous border with Afghanistan, crossing the border zone with such impunity that Pakistan fought a brief border war with its western neighbor in 2025. They also create a highly permissive environment for other, smaller, but even more dangerous jihadist groups, including the Islamic State, to set up shop. Again, this is a known, persistent security threat that Pakistan hasn't just struggled to neutralize. Pakistan security services have been unable to stop the Pakistani Taliban from growing, both in terms of their reach and their operational potential. Today, the insurgents have made themselves drug trafficking kingpins, funneling narcotics into some of Pakistan's biggest cities and its most important economic centers. They've built highly robust, resilient local networks where they've clearly demonstrated an ability to plan operations without Pakistani intelligence catching on. And like the insurgency in Balochistan, they've become so emboldened that they've placed limitations on their own operations unilaterally. Both the BLA and its allies, and the Pakistani Taliban and its allies, prioritize targets that either represent the Pakistani federal government, its institutions, and its military, or targets that represent outsiders, foreign investors, foreign nationals, and even people from other parts of Pakistan. In both cases, Pakistan is fighting operationally savvy, highly capable, flexible, and well-armed insurgent groups, and Pakistan is losing. Neither the BLA nor the Pakistani Taliban are going to overthrow Pakistani leadership directly in the next few years, but both insurgencies are growing stronger despite Pakistan's best attempts to get in their way. And that would already be a serious problem before we get to everything else. And before we do get to everything else, and all the other problems that contribute to Pakistan's severe crisis, we've got to talk about a problem that our team's been working on around the clock. Here at WarFronts and our sister channel Homefronts, our team produces no fewer than 8 episodes every single week for free for you to enjoy. But you insatiable geopolitical nerds still hunger for more, don't you? And that's why we launched Fronts.co, which has recently had a bit of a website redesign, and now, if I might say so myself, looks even better than it did before and is a lot faster. So that's nice. It's our premium subscription service where we provide even more episodes on all the underreported conflicts, the hidden narratives, and the critical stories shaping our world. Subscribe to Fronts.co and you'll get access to our entire library of exclusive bonus content, including weekly deep dives and regular installments of our Briefing Room series, a wrap-up of some of the most important stories that are going on under the radar in global newsrooms, and you'll also get complete access to our written articles compiled by a growing team of award-winning journalists and experts. A subscription costs just $5 a month or $50 a year. It's a pretty good deal. I would say that, but I do think it's true, and it allows us to evolve and expand our free offerings here on YouTube as well. So, thank you to everyone who's supported us so far. And now back to Pakistan. On shaking foundations. Now, just a moment ago, we explained that by themselves, neither the Baloch separatist insurgency nor jihadist groups like the Pakistani Taliban would be able to bring down Pakistan's government anytime soon. The trouble, however, is that Pakistan's domestic security crisis is wrapped up in a far larger crisis, and while it's not true that the larger crisis would allow the BLA or the Pakistani Taliban to take over Islamabad, that's also not their objective. Fundamentally, both of Pakistan's major internal threats benefit from chaos. The weaker Pakistan is, the better, and if the Pakistani state were to decay so badly it began to crumble, then they'd stand to benefit. But they wouldn't be the only ones. From Pakistan's persecuted and enraged political opposition to its economically disenfranchised civilians to the people who believe they should be running the Pakistani state, chaos helps everyone except those who are already in power. We'll start with Pakistan's opposition, where just a few short years ago, members and supporters of that opposition believed that they still had the ability to effect real change in the country. Although Pakistan has long been ruled by its military, which relies on a well-controlled civil government to exercise its will, recent leaders like former Prime Minister Imran Khan have seemed to push back against the military in meaningful ways and succeed. Today, that's no longer the case. Khan is imprisoned after a years-long saga that saw him accuse the military of rigging elections outright as peaceful protesters took to the streets in widespread unrest and paid the price. In the reprisals and crackdowns that followed, Pakistan has severely restricted media freedoms, civil society, and its own domestic politics. Enforced disappearances of journalists, rights leaders, and other critical voices is quite common. Citizens broadly understand that the military is willing to manipulate elections as it sees fit, and Imran Khan himself faces hundreds of legal cases. Many of those cases won't matter in the end, since Khan is already likely to spend the rest of his life in prison. For Pakistan's military leadership, and especially the country's real leader, Field Marshal Asim Munir, its conduct comes with a clear benefit, namely that they allow the military to hold onto its power directly, but the problem with engaging in such naked acts of political repression is that Pakistan's leadership has now left its opposition with no way out. And when a political opposition starts to believe that there's no way to make its voice heard within the status quo, its incentives start to shift rather quickly. That's a lesson some global autocrats have already learned. Take Uganda's Yoweri Museveni, who's repeatedly won re-election in votes marred by state abuses of power, repression, and other blatant acts of manipulation, but has typically allowed unafraid, genuine opposition figures to at least contest the election and always gives them a decent share of the official losing vote. Or take Vladimir Putin, who, seeing an upcoming challenge in Alexei Navalny, allowed Navalny to run in what seemed to be a mostly free and fair election for the mayor's seat in Moscow so that Navalny could lose against the city's genuinely popular incumbent. Counterintuitive as that may seem, little tricks like those are essential parts of a competent authoritarian's playbook, allowing opponents of the regime just enough hope that change could one day be possible through conventional means, so that it's harder to justify a more dangerous form of revolt. It's pretty clever stuff, but if Pakistan's leadership ever understood that principle, it certainly doesn't understand it now. Deprived of legitimate options to push back against the regime, the national opposition is boiling mad, and massive segments of the population also feel the same. That anger is made exponentially worse by the economic problems that Pakistan has endured for years. The nation has been mired in several economic crises, with spiking inflation, enormous trade deficits, and a cost of living catastrophe, all enduring for about half a decade now. In 2026, there are signs that the situation in Pakistan is getting better, but for a sign of just how bad things are, take the findings of a recent Gallup poll, which celebrated its finding that today a full 31% of Pakistanis believe their standard of living is getting better. Now, our big-brain viewers, with a mind for statistics, might be thinking, Simon, that's not even close to half of Pakistan. It's not even 1 in 3. But while you'd be correct to make that observation, the poll is still good news, because just 2 short years ago, a minuscule 15% of people believed their standard of living was getting better, which is worse than every other world nation except for Afghanistan and Lebanon. That same poll found that 1 in 4 Pakistanis believed their local economy was improving, again, more than double what the figure was just 2 years ago. 6 in 10 Pakistanis disapproved of the nation's leaders, and 71% believed that the government is corrupt. Again, better than the nearly 90% from that same poll in 2023. Minor improvements aside, the economic plight of ordinary Pakistanis is still dire, and for the nation's ruling regime, it's difficult to overstate just how massive of a problem that is. After all, this is 2026, and over the past couple of years, we've seen Gen Z revolutions topple dictatorships and dropkick finance ministers for less, in nations that are uncomfortably close to Pakistan's own borders. That's before we even mention the extreme anger with Pakistan in disenfranchised regions, not just including Balochistan, but places like Kashmir. Worse yet, the military's repression campaign means that for the last few years, there's been nobody else to blame except the military and their puppets in parliament. Add to that the fact that the same military is being slammed from all angles on domestic security, while also trying and broadly failing to manage an economy that would take many years of competent leadership to truly repair. Centralization of so many responsibilities under the ultimate direction of Pakistan's military was risky business even when things were going well, let alone when they're going this badly. Then there are all the challenges that Pakistan faces beyond its own borders, where the obvious 2 places to start are India and Afghanistan. Pakistan fought limited conflicts with both nations in 2025, and granted, it did have reason to come away from both dust-ups and claim a level of success. Against India, Pakistan claimed to have shot down several French-made fighter jets using its Chinese models, a claim that Beijing has very enthusiastically turned into a marketing tool for its hardware, while against Afghanistan, Pakistan clearly gained the upper hand in the head-to-head battles that took place. In both instances, however, there's more to the story. Against India, Pakistan may have avoided a nuclear exchange and even gotten a few victories to tout on state television, but it's engaged in battle with a significantly stronger neighbor, left that neighbor with a black eye and a bruised ego that might make future confrontations on India's terms more likely. And against Afghanistan, while Pakistan won most of the head-to-head battles, it failed to meaningfully deter the Pakistan Taliban from doing what it wants in the border zone, or compel Afghanistan to do anything to rein them in. Pakistan achieved its tactical objectives, but not its strategic ones, and now it's put itself into a bind with its own hardliners. When India is perceived to have provoked Pakistan, or the Pakistani Taliban causes chaos in and around its regional strongholds, the military government's dwindling base of supporters expect it to go to war and bring home victories worth bragging about. Worse still, Pakistan may be overcommitting itself internationally in new alliances and security arrangements that would seem to be a victory for Islamabad, but only if you don't look at them very closely. In 2025, Pakistan signed a mutual defense treaty with Saudi Arabia, complete with a NATO-style guarantee of collective security, where an attack on one nation is an attack on both. Turkey appears to be pursuing something similar, although Turkish sources recently told the global press that they won't join that Saudi-Pakistan alliance outright. Pakistan is deepening security ties with Qatar and Egypt. It's making overtures to unstable governments in Somalia, Libya, and Sudan. And every single time it does, it places itself at greater risk of being drawn into Middle Eastern power struggles, Islamic world rivalries, or even open conflicts. That sort of geopolitical engagement, where Pakistan can position itself as a dominant force in the Islamic world, is all well and good, until somebody, somewhere, calls Pakistan's bluff. On the other side of the Middle East's shifting security landscape, India is throwing its support behind a new axis that includes Israel, the UAE, Ethiopia, and Morocco, among others, meaning that India and other nations that would oppose Pakistan now have the opportunity to lure it into a never-ending series of proxy contests. And all of that before we factor in a potential collapse of the ruling regime in Iran, or any other scenario that could prompt a refugee crisis on Pakistan's border. Iran is a nation of roughly 93 million people, over double that of Afghanistan, where Afghan refugees have already placed a severe strain on Pakistan for many years. Zooming out even further, there's Pakistan's precarious relationships with its two largest foreign partners, China and the US. We'll discuss Pakistan's connections with the US first, since they're the ones that deepened more recently as Field Marshal Munir has deepened a personal relationship with Donald Trump. America's current administration values its ties in Pakistan for several reasons, but two reign supreme: China and critical minerals. On the one hand, the US wants to strengthen its presence in Pakistan to counter China, but that's a difficult task. Pakistan is one of China's closest friends anywhere on Earth, even if their relationship remains very complicated, as we will explain in a moment. On the other hand, the US wants Pakistan to be a key part of its critical minerals supply chain, and Pakistan does have the resources to sell, but many of its most important deposits are in the same areas where the insurgency is going on in Balochistan, or where the Pakistani Taliban are at the most dangerous. Pakistan's growing friendship with the US is not free. It's contingent on the idea that America can access those minerals safely and consistently while pulling Pakistan away from China. If one or both of those assumptions prove to be false, then things can start unraveling for Pakistan oh so very quickly. And the same is true for China, except only more so. China may consider Pakistan a close partner, but that's not because Xi Jinping and Asim Munir simply enjoy the sound of each other's voices. Pakistan is a strategically critical asset for China, and as such, China has invested massive amounts of money, time, and manpower to turn Pakistan into the partner it wants. But in geopolitics, China's number one goal is simple. Whether China proves it in Myanmar, in Central Asia, across Africa, or anywhere else. Whatever you do, do not touch China's shit. And if you're a government that China's partnering with, then make sure that nobody can touch their shit. The problem is that the BLA, the Pakistani Taliban, and many other groups across Pakistan are very intent on touching and specifically destroying all of China's shit that they can reach. That problem isn't getting better with time, it's actively and obviously getting worse, punctuated by the recent attacks in Balochistan just days before this episode was written. When we say that Pakistan is mired in crisis, we don't just mean one distinct crisis. Perhaps the most difficult part of the situation for Pakistan's leaders is that all of this is interconnected. Pakistan's internal security relationship damages its relationship with its biggest investors, which harms its economic recovery, which erodes its political system, which makes foreign engagements more dangerous while empowering insurgents on Pakistani soil. All of these problems feed each other, and even though it's had time and plenty of opportunities, Pakistan's leadership has been unable to meaningfully address any of them. At times, it almost seems as if Pakistani leaders don't realize some of these problems exist. Pakistan suffers from chronic, compounding, multi-dimensional instability with no clear path to recovery and no clear sign that its leaders are competent enough to make a recovery happen. That status quo simply cannot sustain forever, and if Pakistan is going to avoid a world in which this crisis gets worse, then its leaders and the international community have to start now. The consequences of failure are simply too dire to accept. And thank you for watching.